I'm gonna just start this off by saying black degradation is a business. Yeah, black degradation is a business. Black degradation is a business. Black trauma is a business. And black death is a business. Two things happen. The masses become desensitized to it, and the powers that be profit off of it. I'm gonna throw out some names real quick. Amadou Diallo, Sean Bell, Oscar Grant, John Crawford,
Trayvon Martin,
Tamir Rice, Terrence Crutcher, Corinne Gaines, Sandra Bland, Alton Sterling, Philando Castile, Eric Garner, Michael Brown, Laquan McDonald, Walter Scott, Sam Du Bois, Freddie Gray, Kendrick Johnson, Botham Jean, Atiana Jefferson, Breonna Taylor, Dante Wright, Ahmaud Arbery, Amir Locke. These were all black men and women, and in some cases, black boys and girls who were murdered by race soldiers. Lives taken, and a hustle is what they make it. And in this case, when I say they, I'm talking about the left wing of white supremacy. Marches, protests, etc., you name it. The right wing of white supremacy demonizes the black victim, while the left wing of white supremacy finds a way to profit off of that black victim's death. Basically, the left wing treats the victim like a prop, and that prop is used to spread awareness, and the prop is used to push social justice and line the left-wing establishment's pockets. Marching, protesting, activism in general, all important. They all serve their purpose. One of the problems is those things that I mentioned become part of the organism of the system of white supremacy. Some of the protests can come in the guise of quote unquote anti-establishment, but meanwhile it's backed by the establishment. George Floyd, as we all know, was murdered back in 2020, and many protests came about because of that. But there's more to it. See, when it comes to the protests, many people believe that George Floyd's murder was a catalyst. But let's look at the reality. The reality is the economy suffered from a lot of job loss. In addition to that, there was a pandemic, and there was a loss of entertainment via sports. See, many people were at home and simply had the time to protest. George Floyd's murder might have been the straw that broke the camel's back, but let's be real. His murder was just one in the many of murders of black men and women. So what I'm saying is his murder wasn't the main thing that got people out of their houses at that time. It was a culmination of many different things happening all at one time. The writing was on the wall for what would happen in 2020. 2020 means clear vision. So with that in mind, things have always been in plain sight. Things are just hidden in plain sight. Some of us have seen it. We've seen it coming and continue to see it and see it coming. And then there are some of us who don't see it. It's Hegelian Dialectic, folks. Hegelian Dialectic. The powers that be cause the chaos. The chaos precipitates the reaction to said chaos. And then the powers that be come in to solve the problem that they caused in the first place. Of course, they do this to appease the masses. Promises of change is sold through concessions and incremental adjustments. What happens is the masses get back on the treadmill of hope. nothing actually changes. The status quo remains the same for the most part. A major part of that status quo is anti-black racism. What's also happening is a PsyOps, aka psychological operations. Psychological operations has always taken place. To define it a bit further, a PsyOps is plans, propaganda, and information conveyed to the masses. This is done to influence their emotions, their attitudes, their opinions, their behaviors, and their objective reasoning. This is done to get the masses in the flow of a certain direction and to get them on board with an agenda. What this does is reinforce behavior that is favorable to the perpetrator of said PsyOps and their objectives. This kind of thing has been employed by the US military. In addition to the PsyOps, what has been happening is proxy wars. A proxy war is a war instigated by a major power behind the scenes. Now, that power behind the scenes doesn't actually get itself involved in the conflict. The Cold War comes to mind, and a few other examples off top that come to mind would be the Korean War, the Vietnam War, and the Soviet-Afghanistan War. Now, let's circle this all back to black people. When it comes to black people in particular, the powers that be have always engaged in the degradation of black people through the use of a proxy. Anytime a high-profile black celebrity is demonized in the public eye, they are a proxy for black people. Overall, it is about associating negativity with black. Negative behavior is heavily associated with black people. So spreading propaganda about black people accused of criminal activity is a way to get the general public to have conflict with black people. Well, first of all, view black people in a negative light, and then eventually come into conflict with black people. And if not directly come into conflict with black people, just have conflicting views of black people, or all of the above. The war on drugs was a way to get the masses on board with neutralizing black people through mass incarceration. With crime being heavily associated with black people, it makes people want to stop crime by stopping black people. With that in mind, you engage in a status quo that is already invested in slowing up black progress, slowing up black liberation. In more recent years, two high-profile black men like R. Kelly and Bill Cosby have become proxies for black men. By making R. Kelly and Bill Cosby the face of rape culture, the powers that be and their mindless followers have made black men the face of rape culture. What happens is it becomes a perpetual cycle of associating negativity with black people. Media, being in the business of mind control, informs the masses on what to think and what to think about. I just think it's time that we see the game for what it is. And that's what this is. It's a game. The powers that be play games with the masses. They play games with the people. They play games with us. That's what this is, a game. Now, don't get me wrong. It's serious. What's going on is it's serious. It's not a fun game. It's not a video game. This is serious. It's life. It's reality. It's the real world that we live in. It's the paradigm that we're in. So this game is serious. Serious business. We need to understand that nothing happens by accident. Nothing happens in a vacuum. meaning that there's always a reason for whatever's happening. I know that there are a lot of complexities. We live in a complex environment. Reality is complex. Life is complex. It's all complex. But there is a synchronicity to all of this. Everything that happens in your life, my life, this person's life, that person's life, the world at large, there is a synchronicity to it all. I'm going to just wrap this up by saying real change isn't coming from Sky Daddy and the government. It's not coming from there. And when I say real change, I'm talking real positive change, because change could either be bad or good. I'm talking about the good change. The good change are not coming from those entities. It's not coming from the one make-believe entity, and it's not coming from the real entity in the real world. Real change is coming from you. Real change is coming from those who want it bad enough. So if you want it bad enough, it's going to come from you. If I want it bad enough, it's going to come from me. If somebody else wants it bad enough, it's going to come from them. Overall, real change is coming from us. That's where it's coming from.